History is often presented to us as a straight line. We imagine it as a well-lit corridor, stretching back from where we stand today, all the way to the beginning of time. Along the walls of this corridor, portraits hang in perfect order. Kings, queens, emperors, popes. Each one has a date of birth and a date of death. Each one has a story. And we walk down this corridor, nodding at the faces, believing that the floor beneath our feet is solid. But what if the corridor is a trick? What if the lights are flickering? What if you were to stop, lean close to one of those portraits, and realize that the paint is still wet? Tonight, we are going to step off the path. We are going to leave the well-lit corridor of accepted history and step into the shadows behind the walls. We are going to explore the possibility that the timeline of human history, the very calendar that dictates your birthday, your holidays, and your current year, is a construct, a fabrication, a story told by powerful men to hide a gap in the memory of the world. We are going to talk about the missing time, the stolen centuries, the years that never were. But before we descend into the specifics, let us first settle into the atmosphere of the inquiry. Imagine you are entering an old library, not a modern one with fluorescent lights and metal shelves, but a library from a time before electricity. The air here is cool and smells of old paper, vanilla, and dust. The silence is heavy, like a blanket. Outside, a storm is brewing, rain tapping gently against the leaded glass windows, sealing you in. You are safe here. The world outside cannot touch you. The demands of your day cannot reach you here. In this room, there is only the slow ticking of a grandfather clock and the rustle of parchment. You run your hand along the spines of the books. They are leather-bound, cracked with age. Some are labeled in gold leaf. Others are blank. You pull one from the shelf. It is heavy. You open it, expecting to see text, but instead, you see pages that have been scraped clean. This is a palimpsest, a manuscript where the original words were erased so that new words could be written over them. This is the central metaphor of our journey tonight. The history of the Dark Ages, that mysterious period between the fall of Rome and the rise of the medieval world, is a palimpsest. The original story was removed, scrubbed away by the rough hands of monks and scribes. And in its place, a new story was written. The story of chaos, a story of ignorance, a story of darkness. But why? Why erase the past? To understand this, we must understand the power of time itself. Time is the ultimate authority. It organizes our lives. It tells us when to plant and when to harvest. It tells us when to pay our debts and when to celebrate our gods. He who controls the calendar controls the rhythm of civilization. If you can change the date, you can change the truth. Let us begin with a loose thread, a small, seemingly insignificant mathematical error that threatens to unravel the entire tapestry of the medieval timeline. We must travel forward, briefly, to the year 1582. The world was changing. The Renaissance was in full bloom. The Church was trying to stabilize its grip on a rapidly modernizing Europe. Pope Gregory XIII sat on the papal throne. He was a man of detail, a man of structure. And he had a problem. The calendar was broken. For over a millennium, Europe had been using the Julian calendar, established by Julius Caesar himself. It was a good system, but it was not perfect. It was slightly out of sync with the solar year, the actual time it takes for the Earth to orbit the Sun. The Julian calendar was 11 minutes and 14 seconds too long. 11 minutes. It seems like nothing. You can lose 11 minutes daydreaming. You can lose 11 minutes waiting for water to boil. But over centuries, those 11 minutes add up. They accumulate like grains of sand in an hourglass. Every 128 years, the calendar would drift by one full day. By the time Pope Gregory looked at the calendar in 1582, the drift had become noticeable. The seasons were sliding. Easter, which was supposed to align with the spring equinox, was arriving too early. The church needed to fix it. They needed to reset the clock. So the Pope's astronomers did the math. They calculated how many days the calendar had drifted since the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD, which was the benchmark they used for the date of Easter. Now listen closely. This is where the ghost enters the room. From 325 AD to 1582. AD is a span of 1,257 years. If the calendar drifts by one day every 128 years, simple division tells us exactly how many days the calendar should have been off. It equals approximately 9.8 days, roughly 10 days. And indeed, in 1582, Pope Gregory issued a papal bull. He declared that 10 days would be dropped from the calendar. October 4th, 1582, was followed immediately by October 15th. The people of Europe went to sleep on a Thursday and woke up 10 days later on a Friday. Riots broke out in some cities. People believed their lives had been shortened by God's representative on earth. But the math worked, or so it seemed. But wait, the Julian calendar had been in effect since Julius Caesar introduced it in 45 BC. If we are correcting the drift of the Julian calendar, shouldn't we correct it from its inception? Shouldn't we calculate the drift from 45 BC to 1582 AD? That is a span of 1,627 years. The math says the drift should be 12.7 days, 13 days. So why did the Pope only remove 10 days? Where did the other 3 days go? Or, to put it more chillingly, where did the other 300 years go? If the calendar was only off by 10 days, that implies that only roughly 1,200 years of drift had occurred. But the calendar said 1,600 years had passed since Caesar. The math suggests that there were 3 centuries, 300 years of history, that simply did not exist. The Earth had not orbited the Sun enough times to account for the date written on the parchment. Someone had added time. Someone had inserted roughly 297 years into the count of Anno Domini. Imagine a ruler, a physical wooden ruler. You are measuring a piece of cloth. You believe the ruler is 12 inches long, but someone has secretly painted an extra 3 inches in the middle. The numbers read 1, 2, 3, and then suddenly jump to 7, 8, 9. The cloth you measure will be wrong. The building you construct will lean. The calendar we live by is that ruler. And somewhere between the fall of Rome and the rise of the Holy Roman Empire, the numbers jump. Who would do such a thing? And why? A crime of this magnitude, the theft of reality itself, requires a motive. It requires an ego so vast that it seeks to reshape time to fit its own reflection. Enter the conspirators. The theory points a finger at 3 men, 3 of the most powerful figures in the ancient world, sitting around a table in the flickering candlelight, rewriting the destiny of the human race. The first is Otto III, the Holy Roman Emperor. The second is Pope Sylvester II, the brilliant mathematician and head of the Church. The third is Constantine VII, the emperor of the Byzantine Empire in the East. Let us focus on Otto. He was young, ambitious, obsessed with legacy. He did not want to be just another king in a long line of forgotten rulers. He wanted to be the emperor. He saw himself as the rightful heir to Jesus Christ himself. And there was a special number that called to him, the number 1000. Christian theology at the time was heavily focused on the millennium. The year 1000 AD was destined to be the beginning of the age of the Holy Spirit, or perhaps the end of days. It was a date vibrating with cosmic power. To reign in the year 1000 would be to reign at the pivot point of history. It would grant a ruler divine legitimacy. But there was a problem. Otto was living in the 700s. The timeline was roughly 300 years short. If he let nature take its course, he would die long before the glorious millennium arrived. He would be a footnote in the 8th century, forgotten. But Otto had Pope Sylvester. Sylvester was known as the most learned man of his time. He studied the stars. He studied the Arab mathematicians. He knew the secrets of the astrolabe. If anyone could manipulate the count of years, it was him. So the theory goes, they made a deal. They would accelerate time. They would rewrite the documents. They would take the current date, let's say 714 AD, and they would decree that it was now 1000 AD. With a stroke of a quill, 300 years of future became the present. But you cannot just change the date. You have to fill the gap. You cannot leave 300 years blank in the history books, or the people will ask questions. Grandfather, they might ask, who was king before you? And who was king before him? You need a story. You need a filler. So the scribes went to work. They invented a phantom time. They looked at the records of the past and began to copy-paste. They took the deeds of real kings from the past and attributed them to invented kings of the new centuries. They created dynasties that were nothing more than mirror images of previous dynasties. This is why, when you study the history of the Dark Ages, you get this strange sense of déjà vu. The stories seem to repeat. You have a Charles the Bald, and a Charles the Fat, and a Charles the Simple. You have dynasties where the names cycle in the same order. Henry, Edward, Henry, Edward. You have battles that are described in almost identical terms to battles fought 200 years prior, down to the weather conditions and the number of casualties. Historians call these topoi, literary conventions. They say the monks just lacked imagination. But the phantom time hypothesis says, no, these are not conventions. These are duplicates. They were stretching the dough of history to make it cover a larger pan. And at the center of this fabricated epic stands the greatest figure of them all, the Colossus of Europe, Charlemagne, Charles the Great. We are told he was a giant of a man, nearly 7 feet tall. We are told he united Europe, founded the Holy Roman Empire, reformed the currency, spread Christianity, and established schools. He is the father of the modern Western world. His beard is white and long. His sword, joyeuse, glimmers in the sun. But Charlemagne is almost too perfect. He is everywhere and nowhere. The theory suggests that Charlemagne is not a single man, but a composite character. A King Arthur figure constructed from the deeds of several real, lesser kings who lived centuries apart. Think about the archaeological evidence. For a man who ruled an empire stretching from France to Germany to Italy, who built palaces and cathedrals and fortresses, where is his footprint? We have the Palatine Chapel in Aachen. It is beautiful, but it is an anomaly. It is an octagonal masterpiece that looks strikingly Byzantine. More like something from Ravenna or Constantinople than something built by a Frankish king in the muddy forests of Germany in the 800s. Aside from Aachen, the archaeological layer for the Carolingian Renaissance is shockingly thin. We find Roman ruins. We find high medieval ruins. But the layer in between, the layer that should be stuffed with the coins, pottery, and foundations of Charlemagne's great empire, it is mostly silent. It is as if the empire existed only on paper. A paper empire. A paper king. Imagine the monks sitting in their scriptoriums. They have orders from the Emperor Otto. Give me an ancestor, Otto demands. Give me a lineage that proves I am the successor to Rome. So the monks create Charlemagne. They give him the wisdom of Solomon. They give him the military prowess of Alexander. They give him the piety of a saint. They write epic poems about his knights, Roland Oliver, which sound suspiciously like myths. And because the church controlled all the writing, all the education, and all the record-keeping, who was there to argue? The peasant in the field could not read. The local lord was busy fighting his neighbor. If the priest read from a book that said, in the year 800, Charlemagne was crowned, then it must be true. Reality was what was read from the pulpit. Take a moment now. Let this idea sink in. Does it feel heavy? Or does it feel light? There is something strangely comforting about it. If history is a story, then the nightmares of the past are just stories too. The wars, the plagues, the suffering of the Dark Ages. If they were invented, then the suffering was invented too. It becomes a dream from which we have already awoken. Let your eyes grow heavy. The rain is still falling against the library window. The candle is burning low, casting long, dancing shadows against the rows of books. The dust motes floating in the air are actually ancient seconds, suspended in time. We have only just scratched the surface. We have looked at the calendar, and we have looked at the king. But the evidence of the erasure is not just found in books. It is found in the stone. It is found in the dirt. It is found in the impossible buildings that tower over our cities, mocking our understanding of gravity. We are told that the people of the Dark Ages lived in wooden huts and forgot how to mix concrete. And yet, they left us mountains of stone that sing. As we move deeper into the fog, we will leave the scriptorium and step out into the world. We will walk the streets of cities that should not exist. We will look at maps that show lands that were not discovered yet. The cover-up is not just about time. It is about capability. It is about who we were and who we were made to forget. Rest your eyes. The next chapter awaits. The fog is thickening. We have stepped out of the library now. The heavy oak door has clicked shut behind us, sealing away the smell of old parchment and the ticking of the clock. We are standing in the open air. It is night. The storm that was tapping against the glass has passed, leaving the cobbled streets slick and reflecting the moonlight like black mirrors. The air is cold and crisp, the kind of cold that wakes up the senses and makes the world feel sharper, more defined. As we walk through this imaginary city, a city that exists somewhere between memory and dream, we find ourselves standing before a structure that defies the darkness. It is a cathedral. It rises up from the earth like a mountain of lace, stone carved so thinly, so delicately, that it seems impossible it can support its own weight. The spires pierce the fog, reaching for stars that are hidden behind the drifting clouds. This is the next chapter of our mystery. We have spoken of the stolen time, the years erased from the calendar. Now we must speak of the silent witnesses, the stones. Because while books can be rewritten and dates can be changed. Stone is harder to lie about. Stone remembers. The official history of the Dark Ages tells us a very specific story about technology. It tells us that when Rome fell, the light of engineering went out. The Romans were masters of water and stone. They built aqueducts that carried fresh water over hundreds of miles with a gradient so precise it is almost invisible to the naked eye. They invented a type of concrete, Roman concrete, that was so durable it could set underwater. In fact, it got stronger as it aged, reacting with the seawater to form new crystals. And then, we are told, we forgot. The narrative claims that for nearly 1,000 years, humanity forgot how to mix concrete. We forgot how to bring water into our cities. We forgot how to heat our floors. We reverted to wood and mud and thatch. We stopped looking at the horizon and started looking at the dirt. But then, out of this supposed intellectual coma, out of this era of mud and ignorance, the Gothic cathedrals suddenly appeared. Let us pause and look at the cathedral before us. Look at the flying buttresses, those stone arches that leap from the outer walls to the ground. They are not just decorative. They are sophisticated exoskeletons, transferring the massive weight of the roof away from the walls, allowing the walls to be made not of thick stone, but of glass, stained glass. We are expected to believe that a society that had lost the ability to build a decent road, suddenly, without any intermediate steps, figured out how to build a skyscraper of stone and glass that utilized advanced geometry and load distribution. Where are the prototypes? Where are the failures? In the evolution of technology, we usually see the clumsy first attempts. We see the Wright brothers' glider before we see the fighter jet. But in the architectural timeline of the Middle Ages, we go from Romanesque bunkers, thick, heavy, dark, straight to the soaring, weightless perfection of the Gothic style. It is an explosion of genius that appears out of nowhere. Unless it didn't appear out of nowhere. Unless it wasn't built by the people we are told built it. There is a theory, a quiet hum in the alternative history communities, that suggests these cathedrals were not constructed in the Middle Ages at all. The theory suggests they are remnants, survivals, that they stood here during the so-called Dark Ages, silent and abandoned, weathering the storm of the reset. Imagine the people of the 8th or 9th century, the survivors of whatever cataclysm caused the timeline to break, wandering into these empty cities. They find these gigantic structures waiting for them. They do not know who built them. They do not know what they were for. But they are magnificent. They are terrifying. So, the new authorities, the church, the new nobility claim them. They move in. They dedicate the building to a saint. They place a cross on the altar. They say, "We built this. This is ours." If you look closely at the stonework of many cathedrals, you can sometimes see the discrepancy. You see the foundation, which is made of massive, perfectly cut megalithic blocks, fitted together without mortar so tightly that you cannot slide a piece of paper between them. And then, on top of that, you see the repair work done in the Middle Ages. Small, uneven stones held together with thick, sloppy mortar. It is the architectural equivalent of a child using crayons to color on a masterpiece painting. It shows a devolution of skill, not an evolution. It shows a civilization trying to patch up a machine it no longer understands. And perhaps it was a machine. Walk with me now. Let us push open the heavy wooden doors of the cathedral and step inside. The sound of the outside world vanishes instantly. The silence here is different. It is active. It hums. The air is cool and still. Your footsteps echo on the stone floor, a sharp, rhythmic sound that travels up into the vaulted ceiling and comes back to you, changed. Have you ever noticed how these buildings make you feel? It is not just awe. It is a physical sensation, a vibration in the chest, a calming of the pulse. The phantom time narrative and the theories that surround it suggest that these buildings were not originally designed for worship, at least not in the way we understand it today. They were designed for resonance. Look at the rose window, that massive circular window filled with stained glass, filled with intricate geometric patterns. If you take a metal plate, cover it with sand, and vibrate it with sound frequencies, the sand creates patterns, cymatic patterns. They look exactly like the rose windows of the great cathedrals. Was the window a blueprint? Was it a visual representation of the frequency that the building was tuned to? Some researchers argue that the great organs, those massive pipes that breathe sound into the stone, were an integral part of this machine. When the organ plays, the sound waves hit the limestone walls. Limestone is highly conductive. The entire building begins to vibrate. It becomes a sound bath. If you were a peasant in the Dark Ages, living a life of hard labor and uncertainty, and you walked into this space, and the frequency washed over you, it would feel like magic. It would feel like the presence of God. And the people who controlled the building controlled that feeling. They could turn the machine on, and the people would fall to their knees. But let's go deeper. Let's look at what sits on top of the cathedral. The gargoyles. Grotesque, terrifying creatures peering down from the roof. We are told they are there to scare away evil spirits. But does that make sense? Why would you put demons on the house of God? Why would you carve monsters with such loving detail? Unless they aren't monsters. Unless they are functional. We see them as statues. But what if they were part of the water system? We know they act as water spouts, channeling rain away from the walls. But some of them look like they are wearing gear. Some of them look like they are holding devices. In the context of a reset civilization, symbols lose their meaning. We see a carving of a man holding a sphere, and we think, religious icon. But maybe originally, it was a man holding a tool. We see a halo around a head, and we think, saint. But maybe originally, it was a depiction of energy, of illumination. We are like children finding a laptop in the ruins of a library. We don't know it computes data. We use it as a serving tray. We give it a new name. We invent a myth to explain the glowing apple on the lid. The Dark Ages may have been the period where we forgot the password, the period where the machines stopped working and we started worshiping the casing. Let us leave the cathedral now. We exit through a side door, stepping back out into the night. We find ourselves in a graveyard. The headstones are old, leaning at odd angles, covered in moss. The ground here feels uneven, and this brings us to one of the most peculiar and widespread anomalies of this lost history: the buried windows. If you walk through the historic districts of almost any older city, London, Rome, Paris, even cities in America like New York or Chicago, you will see buildings where the first floor is half buried. You see windows that are cut off at the ground level, looking into the dirt. You see doors that seem to float halfway up the wall, requiring stairs to reach them. Architects call these light wells, or basements. But often, if you dig down, and people have dug down, you find that these are not basements. They are full ground floors. There are doors buried under the sidewalk. There are storefronts facing into the soil. It looks, for all the world, as if the ground level rose up, or as if a flood of mud and earth swept through the streets, burying the bottom 10 feet of civilization, and we just built on top of it. The official story is that cultural layers accumulate. Trash, dirt, repaving. Over centuries, the street level rises. But 20 feet? Is it plausible that people just kept not sweeping their streets for 500 years until their front doors were underground? Or does this point to a catastrophic event? The liquefaction of the soil? A global flood of mud that wiped out the infrastructure of the previous age, the age that the phantom time was invented to hide. Connect the dots. Rome falls. A cataclysm occurs. The mud rises. The population is scattered, traumatized, reduced to survival. The great machines, the cathedrals, the star forts, the aqueducts are abandoned. Then 300 years later, or perhaps much sooner, the survivors begin to dig out. They reclaim the ruins. A new power rises, the Holy Roman Empire. They see the empty palaces. They see the awe-inspiring technology. And they decide to take credit. They invent a timeline that connects them directly to the ancients. They invent a dark age to explain the layer of mud, the destruction, and the loss of knowledge. They say, we didn't lose the technology because of a disaster. We lost it because we were sinful. We were lost. And now the church has brought the light back. It is the perfect cover story. It turns a disaster into a moral lesson. It turns a reset into a resurrection. And so, we walk on top of the buried doors. We pray in the repurposed power plants. And we memorize the dates of battles that may never have been fought to satisfy the ego of a king who wanted to be Jesus. The night is getting colder. The fog is rolling in off the river, thick and white, obscuring the tops of the buildings. It feels like the world is dissolving, like the solid stone is turning back into dream stuff. The more you look at history, the less solid it becomes. It is liquid. It flows. It changes shape depending on the vessel that holds it. And you, walking through this mist, you are flowing too. Your thoughts are slowing down. The sharp edges of your questions are becoming rounded, soft. It doesn't matter if Charlemagne was real or if he was a ghost. It doesn't matter if the cathedral is a church or a machine. What matters is that it is here, and you are here. And the mystery is beautiful. We are drifting towards the harbor now. We can hear the faint sound of water lapping against wood. There are ships waiting there. Ships that appear on ancient maps, sailing to lands that, according to the history books, had not been found yet. We are going to board one of those ships in the next leg of our journey. We are going to sail off the edge of the known world. We are going to look at the maps of the impossible. But for now, just listen to the sound of your own footsteps fading into the silence. The city is sleeping. The gargoyles are watching, and the history books are closed. Rest here for a moment in the shadow of the impossible. Let the weight of the stone ground you. Let the confusion be a comfort. You don't have to understand the world to rest in it. Sometimes, the not knowing is the deepest peace of all. Breathe in the fog. Breathe out the timeline. We are suspended in the gap. We are safe in the phantom time. Sleep is a kind of time travel too, isn't it? You close your eyes, and hours vanish. You skip the timeline. You wake up in a new world. Maybe that is what happened to all of us. Maybe we are all just sleeping through the centuries, waiting for the true history to wake us up. But not yet. Not tonight. Tonight, we drift. We have left the stone city behind. The sound of your footsteps on the cobblestones has been replaced by the rhythmic creaking of wood and the gentle slap of water against the hull. We are on a ship now. It is a vessel from a different time, tall masts vanishing into the darkness above, sails furled, drifting slowly through a sea of mist. The air here smells of salt and old rope. It is damp and cool. You are standing at the rail, looking out into the white void. There is no horizon. The water and the sky have merged into a single, silent canvas. This is the perfect place to talk about the shape of the world, and more importantly, the shape of the memory of the world. In the standard history books, we are told that for thousands of years, humanity was isolated. We are told that the civilizations of Europe, Asia, Africa, and the Americas were islands, separated by insurmountable oceans, unaware of each other's existence, until the age of discovery in the late 15th century. We are told that Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492 and found a new world. But what if the world was never new? What if it was only forgotten? Come away from the rail. Step into the captain's quarters. It is warm in here, lit by a swinging lantern that casts shifting shadows on the walls. In the center of the room is a large wooden table. And on the table, spread out and held down by brass weights, is a map. It is made of gazelle skin. It is brittle and yellowed with age. This is the Piri Reis map. Dated to 1513, it was drawn by an Ottoman admiral named Piri Reis. But Piri Reis did not explore the world himself to draw it. He was a compiler. In his own notes, written in the margins of this very map, he admits that he pieced it together from 20 older source maps. Some of these source maps, he wrote, dated back to the time of Alexander the Great. Some, he claimed, were even older. Look closely at the map. It shows the western coast of Africa. It shows the eastern coast of South America. The detail is exquisite. Rivers, mountains, bays. But your eyes drift down to the bottom of the map. And there, you see something that makes the hair on your arm stand up. It shows a coastline running along the bottom of the Atlantic. A coastline that shouldn't be there. It connects to South America and stretches eastward. This is the coast of Antarctica, Queen Maud Land. But here is the impossible part. Antarctica was not discovered by modern explorers until 1820. It is a frozen continent, buried under a mile of ice. And yet, on this map from 1513, drawn from sources that are thousands of years older, Antarctica is there. And it is not covered in ice. The map shows mountains. It shows rivers flowing where today there are only glaciers. In the 1950s, the U.S. Air Force conducted a seismic survey of Antarctica, using sonar to map the land beneath the ice cap. When they compared their high-tech results with the Piri Reis map, they found a chilling correlation. The ancient map depicted the subglacial topography of Antarctica with startling accuracy. How could a mapmaker in the ancient world know the shape of a continent that has been covered in ice for at least 6,000 years? There are only two possibilities. The first is that the ice is much younger than we are told. That Antarctica was a habitable, ice-free land as recently as 6,000 years ago, and that human beings sailed there, mapped it, and walked its shores before the big freeze, before the climate shifted. The second possibility is that a civilization existed in the deep past, long before the Egyptians, long before the Sumerians, that possessed technology capable of seeing through the ice. A civilization that could map the entire globe from the air. Either way, the map on the table is a smoking gun. It destroys the timeline of primitive history. It tells us that the ancients were not stumbling around in the dark. They were global. They were connected. And they were mapping the world while our history books say we were still learning to make fire. Let us roll up the map. The parchment crinkles under your touch. We place it back in its tube. The mystery is safe there. But the map is not the only evidence of a connection that was erased. Let us drift east now, in our imagination. Let the ship carry us across the Mediterranean, to the hot sands of Egypt. We are entering the tomb of a priestess. Her name is Henut Tawi. She died over 3,000 years ago. Her mummy was discovered in the 19th century. But it wasn't until the 1990s that a German toxicologist decided to run a routine test on her hair and tissue. He was looking for evidence of diet, or perhaps disease. What he found caused a scandal in the archaeological world. He ran the test again and again, because the results were impossible. He found high concentrations of cocaine and nicotine in the mummy's hair shafts. Now pause. Think about what we are told in school. The coca plant, the source of cocaine, is native to South America. It does not grow in Egypt. It does not grow in Africa. The tobacco plant, the source of nicotine, is native to the Americas. It was unknown to the Old World until the voyages of Columbus. So, how did an Egyptian priestess, living 3,000 years before Columbus, get her hands on cocaine and tobacco? The scientific community tried to dismiss it. They said the mummy was contaminated. They said it was a mistake. But then they tested other mummies. And they found it again and again. The implications are quiet, but they are earth-shattering. It means that there was trade, massive, sophisticated, transoceanic trade between ancient Egypt and the Americas. It means ships were crossing the Atlantic Ocean regularly, thousands of years ago. It means the Old World and the New World have always been one world. But then, the lights went out. The trade routes were severed. The ships stopped sailing. The maps were rolled up and hidden in archives. The ice crept over Antarctica, and humanity entered a period of amnesia. We forgot the other side of the ocean. We forgot the shape of the earth. We shrank. Our world became small, centered around the village, the church, the local lord. Who turned off the lights? This brings us back to the motive, back to the why of the Dark Ages. If you want to control a population, you isolate them. You make them believe that they are alone. You make them believe that the world is dangerous, unknown, and full of dragons. You keep the maps for yourself. Imagine the Vatican's secret archives again. We mentioned them before. 53 miles of shelving. It is said that when the Library of Alexandria burned, that great tragedy of the ancient world, the loss of all human knowledge, it didn't actually burn down completely. The theory suggests that the burning was a distraction, a heist. They say the most valuable scrolls, the maps of the ancient sea kings, the blueprints of the pyramids, the records of the global civilization, were packed up and moved. They were taken to Rome. They were taken to Constantinople. They were locked away in the vaults of the new power structure. The knowledge wasn't lost. It was privatized. Think about the figure of Giordano Bruno, a philosopher in the late 16th century. He was burned at the stake by the church. Why? We are told it was for heresy. Bruno claimed that the stars were not just points of light on a dome, but were other suns. He claimed that around those suns were other planets, and that on those planets were other living beings. He was describing the modern universe. He was describing what we know to be true today. Did he guess? Was he just a lucky visionary? Or had he read something? Bruno was a Dominican friar before he was a heretic. He had access to libraries. He had access to texts that were forbidden to the common man. Is it possible that he found a book, a remnant from the forgotten age, that explained the cosmos? And when he tried to share that memory, when he tried to remind the world of what it used to know, they silenced him. Because a population that knows the universe is vast and that the world is ancient is hard to control. A population that thinks the earth is the center of the universe and that the church holds the keys to the only truth is easy to rule. The ship is rocking gently now. The lantern sways, casting long shadows that dance across the floorboards. You sit in the captain's chair. The wood is smooth and worn under your hands. The ocean outside is deep and dark. It hides so much. Cities swallowed by rising sea levels. Shipwrecks carrying gold and jade from continents that officially didn't exist. The history of the world is not a solid ground. It is an ocean, and we are just floating on the surface, unaware of the currents moving beneath us. But here, in the quiet, in the space between waking and sleeping, the truth doesn't have to be scary. It can be wondrous. It means we are more than we think we are. It means our ancestors were not just mud-dwelling peasants. They were mariners. They were astronomers. They were explorers of the impossible. We carry their blood. If they could sail the stars and map the ice, then that capacity is still in us. It is just sleeping, like the kings in the mountain, like the books in the vault. The fog is lifting slightly. Through the porthole, you can see the faint glimmer of stars. The same stars that Piri Reis looked at. The same stars that the Egyptian priestess looked at. The same stars that guided the ships across the Atlantic 3,000 years ago. The stars haven't changed. Only our names for them have changed. We are going to let the ship drift for a while. There is no rush to reach the shore. The destination is not important. The drifting is the point. In the next part of our journey, we are going to dive. We are going to leave the surface and look at what lies beneath the mud. We are going to look at the structures that are too big, too heavy, and too precise to have been built by horse and cart. We are going to look at the star forts, those massive geometric footprints stamped all over the globe, from Europe to Japan to the Americas. But for now, just listen to the water. Slap, slap, slap. It is the heartbeat of the world. Slow, steady, indifferent to the dates on the calendar. You are safe on this ship. You are the captain of your own drift. The history books are back on the shore, left behind in the stone city. Out here, there is only the mystery, and the mystery is vast enough to hold you. Close your eyes. Feel the gentle sway. We are sailing through the phantom time. We are sailing through the white spaces on the map. Drifting, floating, remembering. We have left the ocean behind now. We are rising. In this dream, you are weightless. You are drifting upward, higher and higher, until the ship is just a speck on the dark water, and the coastline curves away beneath you. From this height, the world looks different. The borders of countries disappear. The noise of politics fades away. All you see is the geometry of the land. And as you look down, gazing at the earth from the perspective of a bird or an angel, you begin to notice a pattern, a shape that repeats over and over again, stamped into the soil of every continent. It is the shape of a star. Tonight, we are going to talk about the star forts. Official history calls them bastion forts. We are told they were developed in the 16th and 17th centuries, primarily by the French military engineer Vauban, and later by others, as a response to the invention of the cannon. The logic goes like this. Medieval castle walls were flat and tall, which made them easy targets for cannonballs. So, military engineers designed low, thick, angular walls to deflect the impact. They added points, bastions, to eliminate blind spots so that soldiers could fire in any direction. It sounds reasonable. It sounds like a textbook answer. But look down again. Look at the sheer complexity of these structures. They are not just squares with pointy corners. They are intricate, mathematical mandalas. They are fractals. Some are 5-pointed stars. Some are 6, 8, or 12. They have layers upon layers of moats, ravelins, and citadel walls, unfolding like a crystalline snowflake made of stone and earth. There are thousands of them. They are found in Italy. They are found in the Netherlands. They are found in Russia, in India, in Japan, in Africa, and in the Americas. Here is the question that haunts the alternative timeline. If these were purely military bunkers designed to stop cannonballs, why are they so beautiful? Why is the geometry so perfect? Why would a military engineer, working in the mud and blood of a war zone, care about creating a golden mean spiral or a perfect hexagonal symmetry that can only be fully appreciated from the sky? Remember, in the 16th century, humans could not fly. There were no airplanes. There were no drones. No general, no king, no architect could ever see the finished product from above. And yet, the precision is absolute. If you overlay the blueprint of the citadel of Palma Nova in Italy with the fortress of Goryokaku in Japan, the geometry is shockingly similar. Yet we are told these cultures were worlds apart. Is it possible that these structures were not built for war? Is it possible that fort is just the name we gave them after we forgot their true purpose? Think about the cathedrals again. We talked about resonance. We talked about frequency. Now look at the star fort. It is almost always surrounded by water. A star-shaped island in a star-shaped moat. Water is a conductor. Stone is a crystal. The shape is a frequency. Some theorists suggest that star forts were originally power plants, not burning coal or gas, but harnessing the subtle energy of the Earth itself, the electromagnetic field, the ether. They argue that the specific geometric shape of the star acts as a lens, focusing and amplifying the natural vibrations of the planet. Imagine the water in the moat vibrating. Imagine the stone walls resonating. Imagine a central tower, often missing now, or replaced by a flagpole, acting as an antenna. What if these were the batteries of the lost civilization? What if they generated a clean, wireless field of energy that powered the cities nearby? But then came the catastrophe, the reset, the mud. The knowledge was lost, the energy field collapsed, and the survivors, the people of the Dark Ages, found these massive abandoned structures. They saw thick walls, they saw moats, and they thought, this is a good place to hide. They moved in. They put cannons on the ramparts. They turned the power plant into a bunker. They turned the generator into a fortress. And because they used it for war, history assumed it was built for war. It is the equivalent of finding a nuclear power plant thousands of years from now, stripped of its reactor, and assuming it was a temple because of the thick concrete walls. We interpret the past through the lens of our own limitations. Let us float across the Atlantic now. Let us look at the United States. We are told that the early settlers, the colonists, arrived in a wilderness. They had basic tools, wooden ships, and they were struggling to survive the winter. And yet, we are told that within a few decades they built massive, intricate star forts like Fort McHenry or Fort Jefferson. Look at Fort Jefferson. It sits in the middle of the ocean, in the dry Tortugas, 70 miles west of Key West, Florida. It is made of 16 million red bricks. 16 million. We are told it was built in the mid-1800s. We are told the bricks were shipped in. But think about the logistics. 16 million bricks. The mortar. The skilled labor required to lay them in perfect geometric arches, underwater, in the middle of a hurricane zone. Does that sound like the work of a young, struggling nation? Or does it look like the work of an empire that was already there? Perhaps the New World was not a wilderness. Perhaps it was a graveyard of the Old World, filled with the ruins of these star cities. And the colonists were not just building. They were excavating. They were digging out the forts from the mud and claiming them for the crown. The mud. We must return to the mud. It is the recurring character in this mystery. If you walk through the cities of the 19th century, or look at the old black and white photographs from the 1850s and 1860s, you notice something strange. You see grand, neoclassical architecture, massive stone columns, domed capitals, towering libraries, buildings that look like they belong in ancient Rome, not in the muddy streets of a frontier town. And the streets are muddy. In the photos, you see these magnificent palaces of stone, and in front of them, dirt roads, no pavement, horse and carts, people in rags leaning against pillars that would cost millions of dollars to cut today. The contrast is jarring. The technology of the building does not match the technology of the people living in it. It looks like a post-apocalyptic scene. It looks like a group of squatters who have moved into the ruins of a superior civilization. And there are no trees. Have you ever noticed that in the old panoramas of cities like San Francisco, Moscow, or Tokyo from the mid-1800s? The cities are barren, miles of stone buildings, but no old-growth trees, just scrub brush and dirt. It implies that the land was scraped clean, that something wiped the slate. This brings us to the concept of the inheritors. The theory proposes that after the timeline was disrupted, after the 300 phantom years, or perhaps after a physical cataclysm like a mud flood, a new population was introduced or emerged from the caves. They were given a narrative. They were told, "We built this. These are our courthouses. These are our post offices. These are our forts." But they didn't know how to use them. Not really. They looked at the massive fireplaces in these old buildings. You have seen them. Fireplaces tall enough to stand in. We are told they were for burning wood to heat the room. But anyone who has tried to heat a high-ceilinged stone ballroom with a wood fire knows it is impossible. The heat goes up the chimney. The room stays freezing. Were they fireplaces? Or were they something else? Some speculate they were ionization chambers, that the metal backplates found in old fireplaces were not for reflecting heat, but for conducting a charge, that the chimneys were not for smoke, but were grounding rods, connecting the roof antenna to the earth terminal in the basement. Perhaps the buildings were climate-controlled by an atmospheric energy that we have forgotten, a free energy. And then the lights went out. The grid went down, and the inheritors, shivering in the cold, looked at the ionization chamber and said, "Well, we can burn a log in there." They de-evolved the technology. They took a high-tech device and used it for a primitive purpose, just like the star forts. It is a melancholic thought to think that we are living in the shell of a greater past, that we are like children playing with a smartphone, using it as a mirror, unaware that it can connect to the entire world. But there is a beauty in it too. It means the potential is still there. The wires are cut, But the walls are still standing. The geometry is still singing, even if we have forgotten how to listen. We are drifting lower now. The aerial view is fading. We are coming back down to the earth, landing softly in the courtyard of one of these silent forts. The grass is overgrown. The cannons are rusted. The tourists walk by, eating ice cream, reading the plaques that explain how many soldiers died here, how many shots were fired. They accept the story. They trust the plaque. But you know better now. You can feel the hum of the shape. You can sense the ghost of the machine beneath the stone. The fog is returning. It wraps around the bastions, softening the sharp angles of the star. It feels protective. Maybe the Dark Ages were necessary. Maybe humanity needed to sleep. Maybe we couldn't handle the power we had, and so it was taken away, buried under the mud, hidden behind a fake calendar, until we were ready to find it again. Are we ready? Or should we sleep a little longer? The night is deep. The questions are heavy. But you don't have to carry them. You can lay them down on the grass. The earth will hold them. The star will hold them. You are safe in the center of the mandala. The geometry protects you. The history protects you. Let the timeline dissolve. Let the centuries blur. 1800, 1500, 1000, 500. It is all one moment. It is all right now. And right now, it is time to rest. In the final leg of our journey, we will walk to the edge of the map. We will look at the people of this lost world, the giants, the delicate ones, the ones who built the doors too tall for us. We will ask who they were and where they went. But that is for later. For now, there is only the hum of the star, and the silence of the mud, and the slow, steady rhythm of your breathing. Sleep. The fort is guarding your dreams. We have left the star fort now. The geometric island has faded into the mist behind us. We are walking back into the heart of the city. But this time, I want you to look at the scale of the world around you. Walk up to the entrance of an old government building, or perhaps a grand library, or one of those magnificent banks built in the early 1900s. Stand in front of the main doors. Look up. The doors are 20 feet tall. They are massive slabs of oak and bronze, heavy enough to stop a tank. And then, look at the door handles. Often they are placed strangely high, or you will see a tiny, regular-sized door cut into the bottom of the giant door. A man-sized door within the God-sized door. Why? We are told it is for grandeur. We are told it is to impress, to intimidate, to make the human being feel small in the presence of the state or the church. And perhaps that is true. But there is another feeling that creeps in when you stand in these cavernous hallways, under ceilings that soar 50 feet above your head. It is the feeling of a child wearing their parents' clothes. It is the feeling that this house was not built for you. You are a guest here, or perhaps a squatter. There is a whisper in the archives, a theory that borders on the fantastical, yet aligns with the visual evidence, that the civilization before the reset was larger than us. Perhaps in ambition, perhaps in spirit, or perhaps, quite literally, in stature. We see this in the instruments. In museums, there are books from the Middle Ages and the Renaissance that are so large, they require 2 men to carry them. We are told they are display copies. But look at the wear on the pages. They were used. They were read. Who reads a book that is 4 feet tall? We see it in the musical instruments. The octobass. A string instrument so large that the player has to stand on a specialized stool and use levers and pedals just to press the strings down. It creates a sound so low, it is barely audible to the human ear. It is felt more than heard. Why build an instrument that requires a machine to play it? Unless, to the original builder, it was just a cello. We are living in the architecture of giants. We walk through their arches. We sleep in their brownstones. We govern from their capitals. And we have convinced ourselves that we built them with pulleys and ropes and horses, in between fighting wars and surviving plagues. But if we didn't build them, how did we inherit them? And where did the builders go? This brings us to the fire. The 19th century was the century of fire. If you look at the history of the world's great cities, almost every single one of them suffered a catastrophic, city-leveling fire between 1800 and 1900. Chicago, 1871. Boston, 1872. Seattle, 1889. San Francisco, 1906. Toronto, 1904. The official stories are often absurdly simple. In Chicago, we are told a cow kicked over a lantern in a barn. And from that one lantern, a city built of stone and brick was reduced to rubble. Look at the photos of the aftermath of the Chicago fire. It does not look like a wood fire. Wood fires leave charred beams. They leave shells. The photos of Chicago look like Hiroshima. The stone is pulverized. Granite has melted. Steel has twisted like ribbon. The destruction is absolute. It looks less like a fire and more like a bombardment or a directed energy event. Was the fire a cover-up? Was it a way to erase the last undeniable evidence of the old world? If you wanted to reset a civilization, if you wanted to force the population to forget the past and accept a new, lower-tech reality, you would need to destroy the architecture. You would need to knock down the impossible towers and the free energy grids. You would need to level the playing field. So you burn it. You blame a cow. You blame an earthquake. And then you rebuild. But you rebuild smaller. You rebuild cheaper. You replace the granite with drywall. You replace the copper domes with asphalt shingles. You replace the magic with the mundane. But they couldn't destroy everything. Some things were too beautiful, or perhaps too useful, to destroy. And sometimes they put the old world on display one last time, just before they tore it down. Let us drift now to the year 1893. Chicago, the world's Columbian Exposition, the White City. If you have never seen photos of this, you must imagine a city of blinding beauty, a city of neoclassical palaces, massive domes, canals, electric lights, and fountains, stretching as far as the eye can see. It was perhaps the most beautiful metropolis ever to stand on American soil. And we are told it was built in 2 years. We are told it was built of staff, a mixture of plaster and hemp, temporarily, just for the fair. We are told it was a movie set, designed to crumble. But look at the photos. Does that look like plaster to you? The scale is immense. The detailing is perfect. The sheer volume of material required, even if it was plaster, would have taken decades to mold and install. And yet, the narrative insists. 2 years, built on a swamp, by men with hammers. And then, as soon as the fair was over, they burned it down. They threw it in the trash. Why? Why would a society that is striving for greatness destroy its greatest achievement? Why would you build a paradise and then set a match to it, unless it wasn't built for the fair? The alternative theory suggests that the White City was not a new construction. It was a restoration. It was a section of the original, ancient city of Chicago, the Rome of the West, that had survived the fires and the mud. They cleaned it up. They painted it white to hide the age of the stone. They turned the lights on one last time to dazzle the public, to show them a glimpse of what was possible. And then, they destroyed it, because it was too dangerous to keep. It asked too many questions. It made the modern buildings look pathetic by comparison. The destruction of the White City is the final locking of the door. It was the moment the old world was officially buried, and the modern world began. A world of steel, glass, and square boxes. A world without mystery. As you walk through the ghost of the White City in your mind, notice the water, the canals. They are calm. The electric lights reflect on the surface. Tesla's lights. This was the first time large-scale alternating current was used. They say Tesla invented it, but maybe he just remembered it. Maybe he just figured out how to turn the old grid back on. The sadness of this lost beauty is heavy, but it is also a relief, because it explains the feeling you have always had. That feeling of nostalgia for a time you never lived in. That feeling that the world used to be more magical, more elegant, more meaningful. You aren't imagining it. You are remembering it. It is written in your DNA. You are a child of the old world, living in the shell of the new. The fog is rolling over the ruins of the White City now. The white domes are fading into the white mist. It is hard to tell where the stone ends and the cloud begins. Everything is temporary, even the lies. Eventually, the plaster cracks. Eventually, the mud washes away. Eventually, the truth floats to the surface like a cork. But you don't need to dig for it tonight. The excavation is over for now. You are standing in the center of the mist. The fires are out. The giants are sleeping. The doors are closed. You are small and warm and safe. You are drifting away from the city, away from the questions, away from the history books. You are lighter than air. You are floating up, past the cathedral spires, past the star forts, past the ice walls of Antarctica. You are floating into the quiet space between the stars. The phantom time is just a story. The calendar is just a number. The only thing that is real is this moment. The slow beat of your heart. The heaviness of your eyelids. Let the world go. It will still be there when you wake up. Or maybe a new world will be there. A better one. But for now, drift, float, sleep. We have reached the edge of the city and the edge of the inquiry. The white domes of the exposition have dissolved into the clouds. The star forts are sleeping under their blankets of grass. The maps are rolled up. The cathedrals are silent. We are drifting now into the final space, the quietest space. It is the space inside your own mind. Throughout this journey, we have asked, what if? We have looked at the cracks in the timeline and the anomalies in the stone. We have suggested that the world is older, stranger, and more magical than we are told. But why does this matter? Why does the idea of a lost, golden age resonate so deeply with us? Why do we feel a pull toward these theories, even when they sound impossible? Perhaps it is because we are homesick. There is a German word, Sehnsucht. It is difficult to translate. It means a longing for something you cannot name, a nostalgia for a place you have never visited. It is that feeling you get when you look at an old ruin, or hear a certain piece of music, or watch the sunset over the ocean. It is a pang in the heart, a sense that you have forgotten something important. The phantom time hypothesis, the stories of the mud flood, the legends of the Tartarian Empire. They are not just conspiracy theories. They are mythology. And mythology is the language of the soul. Maybe the reason you love the idea of a high-tech, beautiful, harmonious past is because deep down, you know that humanity is capable of it. You know that we are not meant for the noise, the stress, and the ugliness of the modern grind. You know that we are builders. We are artists. We are astronomers. The ruins stand as a promise. They tell us, we did this once. We can do it again. The Dark Ages were just a winter. And after every winter, there is a spring. The knowledge is not gone. It is just dormant. It is waiting in the stone. It is waiting in the geometry of the flowers. It is waiting in the helical structure of your own DNA. You are a walking library. You are the descendant of the people who built the stars. You don't need to read the books in the Vatican archives to find the truth. The truth is encoded in your capacity to dream. The fog is lifting now, but it reveals nothing but a vast, calm ocean of stars. We are floating in the velvet dark. The timeline has dissolved completely. There is no 1000 AD. There is no 2024. There is only the eternal now. Feel the weight of your body sinking into the bed. Gravity is a gentle hand, holding you, grounding you. You are part of the earth. You are part of the cycle. Civilizations rise and fall like the tides. They build their sandcastles, and the ocean washes them away, and then they build them again. It is a rhythm. It is a breath. Inhale, exhale. Rise. Fall. You are safe in the lull. You are safe in the silence between the waves. Let your mind wander back through the images we have seen tonight. See the candle flickering in the scriptorium. Blow it out. See the monk laying down his quill. Let him sleep. See the ships lowering their sails in the harbor. The water is still. See the great cathedral, the machine of stone, powering down. The hum fades to a whisper. See the star fort, covered in moss, returning to the earth. The mystery is not a problem to be solved. It is a place to rest. It is okay not to know. It is okay to wonder. In a world that demands you have an opinion on everything, the act of wondering is an act of freedom. Let the questions float away like leaves on a river. Where did the time go? It doesn't matter. Who built the walls? It doesn't matter. What is under the mud? It doesn't matter. Not tonight. Tonight, the only thing that matters is the comfort of the blankets, the coolness of the pillow, the slow, steady rhythm of your own heart. You are the keeper of the memory. You are the dreamer of the dream. The history books are closed. The library is locked. The key is in your pocket, but you are too tired to use it. Let the darkness wrap around you. It is not a scary darkness. It is a warm, prehistoric darkness. The darkness of the womb. The darkness of the seed underground, waiting for the sun. Sleep now. Drift across the phantom centuries. Drift across the erased years. You are timeless. You are home. Good night.